So we started unemployment with obviously the basic definition of what unemployment is, that people who are seeking work uh, from the age of 15 to 65, the legal working age, but they're not able to find work. Yeah, तो उसको हमने इस तरीके से define किया था. फिर उसके बाद we went on and we defined the labor force. Labor force is obviously between 15 to 65, and it includes people who are working or who are still looking for work but can't find any. इसकी calculations एक formula किया हुआ है हमने unemployment का. I remember O level के अंदर तो we do give questions on that, but A level के अंदर AS के अंदर we haven't seen an MCQ for some time जिसमें they might require you to use this. लेकिन what we can also case study is one of those places जहाँ पे unemployment rate निकालने को आ सकता है. But I think still it's O level level का काम है. But yes, this has come. We'll see a question today. Claimant count or labor force survey. Um, so do take a look at it. In fact, we'll discuss it. एक तो claimant count था, एक labor force survey था. One is obviously you conduct a survey. It has some advantages, some disadvantages, reliability के aspect से, and then you have the claimant count, which also relies on unemployment benefit. But there are advantages and disadvantages to that as well. Causes are important. I feel this year के लिए 2026 के examination के लिए this should be an important one. Causes, frictional, structural, cyclical, which one's serious, which one's less serious. Um, तो इसके ऊपर हमारा एक डिस्कशन हो चुका है, and then obviously the consequences that we should also look into. Another thing that I personally feel, अब Bamford के अंदर, Bamford feels that that is something that should be discussed, uh, which is that how significant is unemployment? So, when we talk about the significance, because ऐसे के अंदर I can clearly see that they can definitely want a discussion on it कि अगर unemployment हो रही है, एक तो ये बात होती है how serious is it, right? So we say that cyclical is obviously the serious one, and frictional is not that serious. So what is determining that? So हम कहते हैं it's about if the unemployment rate is on the higher side, if it's very significant, so obviously it's problematic. Low rates would not be that of a serious issue. लेकिन उसके अंदर भी just hold that thought. Like for example, if the question was, क्या low rate of unemployment is always a sign of a good economy? You know, so अब अगर question इस तरह से structure हुआ हुआ है, so you have to say yes, and you have to come up with points that a low rate of unemployment might not be um, uh, good at all times. उसी तरह से हाउ सिग्निफिकेंट इज अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट ड्यूरेशन. शॉर्ट टर्म जैसे हम यूजली कहते हैं फ्रिक्शनल शॉर्ट टर्म होती है एंड इट विल ऑलवेज एग्जिस्ट, सो दैट्स व्हाई वी डोंट रियली वरी अबाउट इट. लेकिन if something is taking if the unemployment is for a long period of time, हमने उसमें देखा भी है कि किस तरह से for an individual the whole idea of hysteresis can come into play here, where long-term unemployment की वजह से the person becomes outdated, and even when the economy revives, it's quite possible that they might not get the naukri, because of the obsolescence, maybe the de-skilling, all of that. So duration obviously plays a big role, and cyclical is obviously one of the major ones. And then types की तो हमारी ऊपर बात हो चुकी है. Different types had different issues. Um, यहाँ पर one of the things that I wanted to point out, which Bamford is doing, so it's worth looking at. Uh, if like that question, okay, low unemployment is a good sign of a strong economy. So we say, sure, if unemployment rate is low, that means people are working, there are incomes getting generated, people's skills are getting used, you're probably near to the production possibility curve, near potential, but at the same time, it is quite possible your country may have low unemployment rate, but it could be that people are working in low paid works. Okay, your economy does not have like good jobs available, and everybody's doing like on the laborious side and not getting so much money. And even there's this idea called the insecure jobs. Uh, I think हम A2 में इस चीज की बात करते हैं, but it's worth mentioning it over here also. The idea of a gig economy. A lot of countries have gig economies. Gig economy का क्या situation होती है that it's not a full-time नौकरी. Okay, that you know that I have to do 9 to 5 and my नौकरी is secure that tomorrow morning I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna go do this work and I'm gonna get my monthly salary. So I have security. But these are one of those, जैसे हमारे यहाँ, construction workers की होती है that every day they're looking for work and sometimes they're lucky that they find an employment and sometimes they don't. तो इस तरह की अगर आपकी इकोनॉमी के अंदर बहुत सारी जॉब्स होती हैं तो इट्स कंसिडर्ड एन इनसिक्योर जॉब्स बिकॉज मे बी टुडे यू माइट नॉट गेट दैट नौकरी एंड मे बी योर इनकम might not be generated. तो इसकी वजह से your monthly incomes become unstable. And because of that, obviously, people cannot plan their expenditures because the incomes are not reliable. So low unemployment rate is not always a sign of strong economy because workers may be paid low or they might have insecure jobs. Uh, एक और आइडिया ये होता है and we've seen that from the Western economy point of view that unemployment rates are falling and the government is saying, let's be happy, our unemployment rates are falling. मगर जब हम फॉर्मूला को देखते हैं तो फॉर्मूला टॉक्स अबाउट हाउ number of people unemployed divided by the labor force times 100, right? तो अगर आपके labor force से if people are leaving because they have become discouraged, they haven't found work for some time and now they're discouraged and they decide to quit on work and then they become homeless and all. The unemployment rate is going to fall down because your labor force is going down and because these people are not interested in working anymore. So you can't consider them unemployed. So आपके numbers can actually show that, things are improving, but clearly not, right? Uh, so it is very important. अच्छा एक और चीज, if your unemployment rate is falling, we should very closely see as to why that is happening. ठीक है? It's quite possible that in your economy, people are looking for full-time jobs, but there are only part-time nokris available. So that's what they're doing. There are not much good jobs available, so that does not mean that a falling rate be a good thing. अच्छा, उसके अलावा when unemployment is happening, it is usually not equally spread. क्योंकि होता क्या है कि जब अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट होती है तो इट समटाइम्स डिस्क्रिमिनेट जेंडर वाइज, एज ग्रुप वाइज, दैट हो सकता है कि एक बिजनेस के अंदर if things are not doing so well and it's like cyclical unemployment, the entire economy is falling, so it's quite possible that, they might retain men and fire females, or they might retain the middle-aged workers and they might retire the young ones, early starters, and even people closer to retirement age, so they can definitely do that. Ethnic backgrounds के related हो सकता है, skill related हो सकता है, regional हो सकता है. So unemployment does not affect everyone इक्वली। तो ये जब हम सिग्निफिकेंस की बात करते हैं, तो all of these things can come into play. You can look at this, ये Bamford के अंदर unemployment का, that's the last bit, uh, तो आप उसमें से देख सकते हैं. So I want to go over the questions today. So the first question, uh, I want to go over unemployment के point of view से. Let me see which one we can go for. We'll start with an eight marker. There's quite a lot of eight markers actually. Yeah, this one though I checked, so I'll walk you through this one. Oh yeah, it's this one. All right, let's take a look at this one. I don't know if we've already gone through this one. Please read the question. So, all right, explain two methods of measuring unemployment and consider uh, the extent of the possible difficulties in obtaining an accurate measurement of unemployment. I remember checking this question, and some of the things that we have to be really cautious when we are looking at questions like this is if you notice the way they've asked for the second bit of this question, right? So they are specifically asking us, okay, what are the possible difficulties that one might face when measuring unemployment? So, pehla to let's deal with the easy part. They have mentioned how many they want, how many methods. वैसे तो हमने सिर्फ दो methods ही पढ़े हैं, so we have to answer accordingly. This is how they have given marks for it. एक तो for naming the two methods. So we have the claimant count and we have the labor force survey. You get one mark for naming them correctly. Okay, not the abbreviation LFS, but rather you write the whole thing. Uh, ठीक है? So you're gonna get one mark for the identification of the two and one mark each for defining. तो जब हम चेक कर रहे थे तो we saw कि claimant count के अंदर honestly the only thing that we were looking for is that a kid is able to explain that claimant count is measured uh, based on the unemployment benefits taken, right? So you had to make connection with unemployment benefits. Okay, so basically you look at the number of people who are getting unemployment benefits. So इस तरह से if you write, that's good enough. In the labor force survey, we were looking for that the kid mentions that labor force survey जो है वो एक सर्वे होता है जिसके अंदर we identify people who are unemployed. ठीक है. Uh, Usually the smarter thing over here to do was you explain the whole process. Okay, तो उसके अंदर obviously गलती नहीं होती. That in the labor force survey, by the way, just to give you a little background again, labor force survey is a United Nations organization under the International Labor Organization. In a country, they take a sample population and they survey those sample population and asks them relevant questions about the type of naukri they're doing, how many are unemployed, what are the working conditions, what kind of jobs they're conducting. So multiple questions. But the key idea using labor force survey to measure unemployment is that in the survey we would find out how many people are unemployed. That's it, right? So these 3 marks are very easy to get, by the way. You just have to remember the basic definitions. Uh, then the later part of the question is where we felt that students had little issues because remember this question is part के अंदर it's not only about like advantages and disadvantages which people usually tend to write. Excuse me. Consider the extent of the possible difficulties. Okay, so जब हम measure कर रहे हैं unemployment तो problems क्या आ रही है हमारे पास. तो इधर what we decided when we were checking uh, and we accepted it कि when students wrote के claimant count में क्या difficulties है, right? So we were willing to give up to 2 marks for claimant count में क्या problems है, and we mentioned this before also. तो claimant count के अंदर there are couple of difficulties. Okay, the difficulties in claimant count is that people can falsely claim unemployment benefits. They might be working in cash and they might tell the government that we don't have a naukri and they can basically take money out of the government's pocket. बिल्कुल हो सकता है. Another one we had for claimant count, which generally a lot of kids wrote about, was that maybe people decide not to claim unemployment benefits because of, let's say, the status or the ego that a person might face that, okay, मैं unemployment benefit लूं, you know, so that not might not play a good role basically, right? तो वो एक इशू हो सकता है या फिर एक्सेसिबिलिटी का इशू हो सकता है दैट मे बी ये जो अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट बेनिफिट क्लेम करना होता है इट्स वेरी रिमोट एरियाज और मे बी people don't have like good knowledge about how they can get this unemployment कहाँ पे claim करनी है and all of that, right? तो वो भी एक इशू हो सकता था. Okay. But then you have to also suggest some of the labor force survey की difficulties, right? So इसकी जब हम difficulties की बात करेंगे, तो इसकी difficulties के अंदर we can talk about कि obviously there is like sampling error that can happen. कि जितने लोगों का I think in Pakistan they labor force survey generally I think they take like 30-40,000 people का survey and they call them up and they would ask these questions. So sampling error क्या होती है that people might not, they just want to get rid of that phone call and they might just give wrong data. They might not answer it as clearly. Sometimes, you call people and they've changed their numbers. Now you don't have those same people in your sample anymore. and sometimes you just not able to connect to those people. So इसके अंदर बहुत सारे आपके पास errors आना शुरू हो जाते हैं. So you have to be very vigilant when you are doing the sampling and the surveys. So there's lots of problems that you can have. So any three of these you write, you get yourself the marks, but you have to mention दोनों के अंदर. If you do only one के तीन चार लिख दोगे, you're not gonna get more than 2 marks, right? So you have to write that. ठीक है. फिर उसके बाद the evaluation, the extent of the possible difficulties. अब इसके अंदर evaluation के अंदर you have to come up with
To
uh,
have advantages also.
yeah, advantages. I'm just trying to think कि क्या were we looking at the advantages, but I don't think. But um, I remember evaluation के अंदर I don't know why because question के अंदर तो इस तरह का कोई discussion नजर नहीं आ रहा. But we were supposed to a student was supposed to choose one of the two. That which one is a better one, and we accepted that conclusion. That labor force survey is a better, although the question is not, that's so strange. The question has nothing to do with that, but in दो measuring के अंदर हमने basically what we wanted in the evaluation is that because of the difficulties, you now give one last conclusion कि which one is a better survey. So which one is the better one? So obviously in the evaluation, uh, overwhelmingly, everybody chose that labor force survey has, fewer difficulties and is better measure. And इसके advantages उससे compare किए थे हमने. Oh yeah, yeah. So this is where the advantages did come into play. तो इसके अंदर फिर हमने ये किया था कि why is labor force survey a better one as compared to the claimant count. तो उसके अंदर the kids what we wanted was if you write something like वो जो falsely claims का problem है in the claimant count, labor force survey does not have that issue, right? So उसकी वजह से labor force survey is better than that because इस सर्वे के अंदर through a very extensive uh, procedure you are able to eliminate the problems that the claimant count system has, and you can also compare labor force survey can be compared between countries, right? Between countries. तो इस तरह से basically we had to choose. Obviously यहाँ पर we have the time and the expensive का problem and even like obsolete होने का problem. There's so much over here also. Sorry, not absolute, but obsolete होने का issue. So, yeah. So basically, evaluation was about the comparison how the labor force survey is a better measure in comparison to the claimant count. क्योंकि claimant count के अंदर जो issues हैं वो basically labor force survey sort of covers. अच्छा, ऐसे although this question should have been slightly different, होता क्या है कि पहले आपने क्लेमेंट काउंट के डिसएडवांटेजेस दिए, फिर आपने लेबर फोर्स के डिसएडवांटेजेस दिए, और फिर आपने इन दोनों को कंपेयर किया कि कौन सा ज्यादा बेहतर और रिलायबल है इन कंपैरिजन टू द अदर वन. ठीक है. पहले जो आपने डिसएडवांटेजेस दिए हैं वो आपने इनके रिस्पेक्टिव डिसएडवांटेजेस दिए हैं, नॉट इन लाइट ऑफ दूसरे के, लेकिन लेटर ऑन इन योर इवेल्युएशन यू सॉर्ट ऑफ लाइक competed them and decided which one's a better one compared to the other one. तो ये इस तरीके से this question was basically solved. तो ये तो हमारे वेरिएंट में आ चुका है, दिस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन। इसके अलावा अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट का हमारे वेरिएंट में कोई नहीं आया। बाय द वे, इसका एक सॉरी, पार्ट बी जो है, let me show you the part B. I don't want to discuss part B right now, but let's take a look at part B also for the moment, because this one's more on the correction side, na? So that's why I don't want to go over this right now. Yeah. So the question says assess whether supply side policy is likely to be equally successful in reducing both structural and cyclical unemployment. Obviously, we need to know what structural and cyclical is, and then we're going to take the supply side policy. A lot of kids struggled with this particular essay. We'll come back to this in a bit. First, let's go over a question जिसके अंदर types के ऊपर कोई specifically question आया हुआ हो. I think there are two questions which have uh, come. तो एक नवंबर 23 में आया है एक क्वेश्चन. Let me take you there. November 23, variant 23. Yeah, this one right here. All right, let's take a look at this one. All right. Now, this was I think it's a pretty straightforward question. I don't know if इसका part B क्या था, but we'll take a look at it in it. With reference to a country that is known to you, explain the main causes of unemployment and consider which of these causes is most significant. Okay. So, पहली बात, whenever they say कि कोई country को use करो, तो I think it's fundamentally important that you have to talk about a country. It should matter. Okay. Uh, but it can be open-ended. I don't think they're gonna go and they're gonna text it out कि अच्छा आप जो country के बारे में लिख रहे हो उसमें क्या scene है. But mostly people do go for their own country. Um, I I know कि I've checked. I usually check Mauritius वगैरह के papers. उसके अंदर तो kids are very in tune to what their economy is facing and all, and we see in their essays that. They write a lot about the country with examples and things like that. So when you do that, obviously the examiner is supposed to consider those information, right? So इस case के अंदर, what is the main? अच्छा, there's no wrong answer in this one as long as आप अपने causes of unemployment को ठीक तरीके से लिख लो. And mainly we're looking for those three में से two, ना? So, how the marking will go? First thing I've always mentioned, you know, main causes लिखा हुआ है, तो explain the main causes of unemployment. So, यहाँ पे कितने causes होने चाहिए? I think at least two causes are important because when we break down our answers, we know कि knowledge and understanding के अंदर they apply 3 marks. Um, we should always define this terminology, right? Uh, it's always, in fact, पिछला जो क्वेश्चन हमने किया था, आई थिंक इट वुड हैव बीन वाइज फॉर अस टू do a definition there also, although there was no mark for it, but we should have done that, unemployment. So number one, what we should do is we should define unemployment. Unemployment is when people are seeking, actively looking for work, but they can't find work. तो ये आपकी unemployment की definition हो गई. फिर उसके बाद there are two causes you can choose between. uh, Frictional, uh, you have structural, and you have your cyclical, and you must define. Acha, you can actually go into, I think you're allowed to go into के structural के अंदर you can explain the technological one, fictional के अंदर you can explain the seasonal one. I think so. I don't think उसके अंदर कोई problem होना चाहिए. You can definitely take. My suggestion would always be कि एक frictional का choose कर लो, एक structural का choose कर लो. ठीक है? Even if you want to go into the subset. Like for example, if you talk about Pakistan and you can say Pakistan is developing, तो Pakistan में structural changes are happening. Industries from primary are closing and secondary में there might be more coming, right? या आप ये कह सकते हो if your economy is going through a recession, तो cyclical unemployment हो रही है, the entire AD is falling and so, right? Uh, but remember, अगर आप सिर्फ एक अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट को लिखते हो और उसको डिटेल में लिख देते हो, तो maximum we can give you is a 2 mark. Okay. लेकिन अगर आप कोई कंट्री का नाम नहीं लेते हो तो 1 mark मिलेगा, because question has specifically said with reference to a country that you know. So if you don't do that, तो अच्छा, तो that means कि causes के अंदर अगर 1 mark अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट की डेफिनेशन का है, तो फिर उसके बाद आपको how is that possible? And they would always tell K, because the later part says consider which of these causes. It has to be two. It can't be one. Yeah. So it has to be two. So 1 mark आपका डेफिनेशन का हो गया, और probably एक एक मार्क आपका जो है दो कॉजेस के ऊपर हो गया. और फिर उसके बाद नो, इट्स कंफ्यूजिंग. ये कैसे हो सकता है? Let me look at the marking scheme for a second. Okay. All right. For an understanding of what is meant by a definition of unemployment, that's 1 mark. For an understanding of what is meant by at least two types of unemployment, so that's another 2 marks right there. So 3 marks complete हो गए, right? 1 mark definition का और at least लिखा है, तो 2 marks for that. Yeah, makes sense. सही है. No issues. That's what we were saying. Okay. फिर उसके बाद consider which of these causes is most significant. When we abhi मैंने start of this lecture I spoke about that when we talk about the significance, so we have to uh 3 marks, because हमें 3 marks के लिए एक तो आई थिंक, अगर लेट्स सपोज अगर हम सिक्लिकल की बात करते हैं, तो सिक्लिकल की सिग्निफिकेंस क्या होती है? That entire aggregate demand is falling, and all industries and all types of workers are facing unemployment, right? So, are facing unemployment. So, basically, there is a large number of unemployment, and this can be long term as well. तो ये इसकी सिग्निफिकेंस हो गई. यू कैन गेट अप टू 2 marks फॉर अ डिटेल्ड किसी भी एक के बारे में. ओके. फ्रिक्शनल के केस के अंदर हमें पता है कि दिस वन ऑलवेज एग्जिस्ट इन द इकोनॉमी एंड वीव नोन के गवर्नमेंट डज नॉट वरी सो मच अबाउट इट. डिपेंडिंग ऑन डिफरेंट कंट्रीज इसके डिफरेंट परसेंटेजेस हो सकते हैं. But make sure that you do mention, you give reference to the country. Like, even if I write all of this and my discussion does not refer to a country, you can't get more than 1 mark. So, किसी भी country का reference that all you have to say like is in Pakistan is going through a recession और उसकी वजह से जो है we're facing a large number of unemployment in all industries and the whole economy is going down. This leads to a large number of people unemployed and cyclical, if not corrected timely, तो फिर it can last long also. So just a mention of a country is fundamental. You don't want to leave unnecessary marks. Frictional के अंदर you can talk about the seasonal unemployment. Pakistan also goes through seasonal because हम weather पे बहुत reliant है. और हमारे मेजोरिटी लोग जो है वो एग्रीकल्चर में काम करते हैं. प्राइमरी सेक्टर इज बिग. तो वी हैव द होल सीजनल अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट का इशू इन पाकिस्तान. एंड उसके लिए बिकॉज वी आर पीपल are just like not multi-skilled and they're just skilled in one type of work. So obviously they face struggle. फिर आप स्ट्रक्चरल की भी बात कर सकते हो. स्ट्रक्चरल के अंदर आप टेक्नोलॉजिकल की बात कर सकते हो, रीजनल की बात कर सकते हो, पूरी प्राइमरी सेकेंडरी टर्शरी की मूवमेंट की आप बात कर सकते हो. दैट एज पाकिस्तान इज डेवलपिंग, प्राइमरी सेक्टर इंडस्ट्रीज आर क्लोजिंग एंड द सेकेंडरी सेक्टर इंडस्ट्रीज आर ओपनिंग नाउ. तो उसकी वजह से जो है द प्राइमरी वर्कर्स आर गेटिंग अनएम्प्लॉयड. And numbers are large, by the way. Remember, जो structural unemployment होती है उसमें industries are permanently shutting down. So that is a big problem for countries. Okay, as far as evaluation goes, if in your entire answer you haven't named the country, and even in your evaluation you are not talking about the country, you can't get marks for evaluation. Country needs to be measured. Uh, which of these causes is most significant? So obviously, recession, the cyclical one is the most significant because of the duration, because of the number of people that it includes, is far greater than even if it is like a structural or frictional, right? तो उस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से आई थिंक इसका इवैल्यूएशन इज द क्लियरेस्ट वन अगर आपने सिक्लिकल का डिस्कशन किया है. ठीक, तो उसके अंदर तो ऑब्वियसली यू विल हैव टू सजेस्ट. तो इसी
You need
तरीके से इसका होना
statistics.
चाहिए. You don't need statistics. You don't need statistics, honestly. We just need a basic discussion. असल में तो ये क्वेश्चन के अंदर इन्होंने नेम लिखा भी नहीं होता ना, तो काफी हद तक जो आंसर होना था वो वही होना था. Just by adding the name, they're just adding a layer to the question, and you don't do that, you lose a lot of marks. Like, for example, if you don't name, how many marks can you lose, even if you do a fantastic answer? So if you don't name, पहले तीन तो तुमको पहले तीन मिल जाने चाहिए. If you define and you do two types and you just basically define what they are, you get your 3 marks. If you don't name a country, then you can only analysis में you can get uh, if you don't name it 1 mark कटेगा. ठीक है, क्या आपने फ्रिक्शनल का बता दिया, इसका बता दिया, so you get 1 mark, but for not naming you're going to lose 1 mark. And then evaluation case, so basically you're going to lose out 3 marks if you don't name any. उसके अलावा अगर आपने सारी सिग्निफिकेंस और सब वर्ड्स और उसको सही से एक्सप्लेन किया है तो यू कैन गेट अप टू 5 marks इन दिस क्वेश्चन विदाउट नेमिंग. So it just adds a layer to evaluation and analysis, basically. I'll show you another question जिसके अंदर ये बात हो चुकी है. अच्छा, इसका पार्ट बी अगेन, just to go over for now, the discussion, assess whether supply side policy is the only way of reducing long term unemployment in an economy. अगेन वही सप्लाई साइड की बात हो रही है. सप्लाई साइड के अंदर, बिकॉज द वे द क्वेश्चन इज स्ट्रक्चर्ड, दैट मीन्स के आपको सिर्फ सप्लाई साइड की बात तो नहीं करनी. यू कांट गेट एनालिसिस के पूरे मार्क्स फॉर जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट सप्लाई साइड, because it's the only way. So it's not the only way. You can talk about other policies also. Uh, Long term unemployment in the economy की बात कर रहे हैं. लॉन्ग टर्म के अंदर स्ट्रक्चरल भी आता है और लॉन्ग टर्म के अंदर सिक्लिकल भी आता है. तो बेसिकली व्हाट दे वांट अ डिस्कशन ऑन इज दैट cyclical policy through aggregate supply के increase के it can correct the problem. लॉन्ग टर्म अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट को कम कर सकता है, जिसमें स्ट्रक्चरल कुड बी वन ऑफ द वेज. स्ट्रक्चरल आप कैसे ठीक करते हो? स्ट्रक्चरल सप्लाई साइड पॉलिसी के अंदर यू हैव education and training, technology adoption, infrastructure building, um, privatization, deregulations, and things like that. You know, तो एजुकेशन एंड ट्रेनिंग स्ट्रक्चरल अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट को ठीक कर सकता है, टेक्नोलॉजिकल को ओवरकम कर सकता है. ठीक है, लेकिन सिक्लिकल को ओवरकम नहीं कर सकता. सिक्लिकल इज एडी गोइंग डाउन. तो उसके लिए यू नीड द फिस्कल पॉलिसी. तो असल में इस क्वेश्चन के अंदर दैट इज द डिस्कशन दे वांट, दैट यू वांट टू प्रपोज अ फिस्कल पॉलिसी एंड यू वांट टू प्रपोज किस तरीके से फिस्कल के थ्रू आप सिक्लिकल को टैकल कर सकते हो. ठीक है, बट उसके अंदर भी यू हैव टू टॉक अबाउट द काउंटर. सो विल कम टू दैट वन ऑल्सो, बट इन जस्ट अ बिट. ओके. इसके अलावा 8 मार्क के अंदर they have given another question, and it's the most recent one. Yeah, so let's take a look at the much more recent questions. Let's see if I have it. ये अभी आया है नवंबर के अंदर. I don't know if I have it here. So let me take a look at this one. Okay. What do I have right now? Oh, this is March one. Let me just tell you the question only. Uh, yeah, let me see if I have it. The question is, explain the difference between structural unemployment and cyclical unemployment, and consider the extent to which structural unemployment is likely to be more damaging to an economy than cyclical unemployment. Uh, just give me 1 second if I can upload it somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, right here. So I could just all right. Yeah, now we have it. So it's the most recent one that we have, this particular question. Okay, so let's take a look at this. It's not our variant, it's another variant, and they want us to explain the difference, right? So figure out what's the third mark for this one. पहला तो आपने obviously structural को define कर दिया, दूसरा आपने cyclical को define कर दिया. What could be the third mark, basically? I think it would be a wise idea to do the unemployment की definition. Always a smart idea to do that. You never know कि उसके ऊपर कोई mark वो लोग दे दें, हो सकता है नहीं भी दे, you know. But I think one of the things that we should, I don't know, I would be just mindful of that, just in case कि ऐसा ना हो कि they might actually decide कि हम differences के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. So maybe just giving the definitions out might not be just a plausible idea. So first thing what I would do is in this question, for one mark, I would definitely define unemployment क्या होता है. So we know unemployment क्या होता है. It's people who are willing and able to work but can't find work. तो एक मार्क जो है हम उसका कर सकते हैं. दूसरा mark would be for defining structural unemployment. तो जब हम structural unemployment को explain करते हैं तो obviously we're talking about how economy के अंदर जो है your industries might be changing from primary to secondary to tertiary. If we look at Bamford, do I have Bamford? Second. Because I usually think कि ये लोग जो definitions उठाते हैं ना ये बिल्कुल Bamford से जाके उठा देते हैं और फिर हमें फिर बोलते हैं कि बिल्कुल ही आप Bamford के हिसाब से डेफिनेशन को देखें. um, yeah. So Bamford defines structural unemployment as that. I'll read it out. Structural unemployment arises due to changes in the structure of economy. Okay, that's redundant. Over time, the pattern of demand and supply changes. Okay, demand for some product decreases while demand for other product increases. Some industries expand and some industries contract. So इसके अंदर they talk about it could be because of advancement in technology. It could be because of the mismatch between the job vacancies and the skills required or qualifications, geographic location. So all sorts of other things they have talked about over here. But जब आप marking scheme में देखते हैं तो this is what the marking scheme says. Structural unemployment occurs due to structural changes in the economy because of changes in the pattern of demand and supply for products. Do you see the resemblance of products, services, even labor? So this is why I say that Bamford is the most significant space you want to go and do the words and the definitions, because कॉपी पेस्ट हुई हुई है बैम्फर्ड की दो लाइनों की डेफिनेशन इधर. I think examiners will have a little space over here कि अगर बच्चे स्ट्रक्चरल को एक्सप्लेन करते हैं इन टर्म्स ऑफ इंडस्ट्री के अंदर चेंजेस आर हैपनिंग एंड प्राइमरी से सेकेंडरी से टर्शरी की तरफ मूवमेंट हो रही है, कंपैरेटिव एडवांटेजेस में चेंजेस हो रही हैं जिसकी वजह से लोग अनएम्प्लॉयड हो रहे हैं, दैट शुड बी परफेक्टली एक्सेप्टेबल. बट ऑनेस्टली यू नेवर नो. ठीक हो गया. उसी तरह से बिकॉज द क्वेश्चन इज अबाउट द थर्ड मार्क गोज फॉर cyclical. हमें पता है cyclical unemployment is also called the demand deficient. I think इसमें तो हर बच्चा ही लिखेगा कि cyclical unemployment happens because of the fall in aggregate demand in the economy, and it could be because of the downturn in the economic cycle या business cycle, trade cycle. It's up to you. तो या इसका भी मैं अगर तुमको कंपैरिजन दूं. ओके, सिक्लिकल की बात कर रहे हैं. सिक्लिकल की डेफिनेशन जैसे इज the third type of unemployment, cyclical unemployment or demand deficit unemployment, arises due to lack of aggregate demand. Cyclical unemployment affects the whole economy with job losses occurring. Okay, that's not definition. उसके अलावा they've shown some diagrams and no discussion of economic cycles as such इसकी definition के अंदर. I wonder why. लेकिन अगर मैं मार्किंग स्कीम से आपको पढ़ के दूं तो cyclical unemployment occurs due to lack of aggregate demand, जैसे हमने पहले बात की, within an economy, because of downturn of the economic cycle. उसने लिखा है मार्किंग स्कीम में, बट एज एन एग्जाम्पल you can come up with some other reasons as to why aggregate demand fell, but the key idea is AD fell, right? So आपने उसके हिसाब से इस बात को कहा. ओके जी, वेरी गुड. आगे बढ़ते हैं फॉर दिस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन. या consider the extent to which structural unemployment is likely to be more damaging to an economy than cyclical unemployment. Structural is more damaging. Now, how do we convince them with this idea? Because we have to suggest something, and your answer needs to be answered in terms of structural unemployment is more serious, and then also structural is probably not that serious as compared to cyclical. Cyclical is more serious. तो आई थिंक ये तो इसकी डेफिनेशन और इसकी फर्दर डिस्कशन से ये बात हो जाती है. So, in my opinion, जब हम बात करते हैं structural unemployment की, the thing with structural unemployment is one of the things that we know about structural unemployment is that structural unemployment जब होती है तो usually what happens is those particular industries इंडस्ट्री जो है वो आपकी शट डाउन हो जाती है. सिक्लिकल के अंदर उसकी अभी क्योंकि इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी गिरी हुई है तो डिमांड गिरी हुई है. इट्स नॉट परमानेंट. इंडस्ट्री शटडाउन इज परमानेंट इन दिस केस. तो पाकिस्तान के अंदर लेट्स इमेजिन कि अगर आपकी टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री में कुछ सर्टेन चेंजेस आ रही हैं एंड वी आर लूजिंग कंपैरेटिव एडवांटेज, तो पाकिस्तान टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्रीज शटिंग डाउन एंड अदर इंडस्ट्रीज लाइक बैंकिंग एंड ऑल आर कमिंग अप. तो ये एक परमानेंट शटडाउन है जिसकी वजह से अब जो इसके लोग अनएम्प्लॉयड हुए हैं, their skills and qualifications have become redundant now. Now they can't find नौकरी anywhere else also. तो उस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से जो है हम कहेंगे कि यार यू नो व्हाट, इट इज मच मोर ऑफ या अगर आप स्ट्रक्चरल के अंदर, इवन इफ वी टॉक अबाउट द रीजनल वन, तो वी वुड से द सेम प्रॉब्लम विद द रीजनल वन कि एक पर्टिकुलर एरिया है, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल अगर पाकिस्तानी फॉर सम रीजन, लेट्स से पाकिस्तान स्पोर्टिंग गुड्स बिकम लेस डिमांडेड, व्हाई? बिकॉज वी बीन अक्यूज्ड ऑफ कि हम बच्चों से चाइल्ड लेबर कराते हैं, सो द एंटायर वर्ल्ड बाइकॉट्स अस। तो उसकी वजह से द एंटायर Sialkot industries are going to get affected and their ancillary small firms which helps the big firms produce footballs and all। तो वो पूरे रीजन के अंदर बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम आएगा। तो that can be a problem also because that's going to be a permanent loss of income for that particular region। ठीक। इवन टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ भी यही इशू है कि एक नई टेक्नोलॉजी आई, उसने पुरानी को वाइप ऑफ कर दिया, खत्म हो गया। दोस पीपल आर रिडंडेंट नाउ, इररेलेवेंट है वो लोग। सही। तो ये आपका हो गया एक पॉइंट कि स्ट्रक्चरल की परमानेंसी का इशू है। ओके। जहां तक सिक्लिक, इन कंपैरिजन टू सिक्लिकल वेयर दोज जॉब्स कैन कम बैक, cyclical can be more serious because it affects all industries simultaneously in the economy। तो उसकी वजह से जब अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट आएगी तो वो बहुत ही ज्यादा वाइड स्प्रेड होगी, affects way more number of people, and they all will be having difficulties even कि हम दूसरी नौकरी में नहीं जा सकते, बिकॉज सारी इकोनॉमी, सारी ही इंडस्ट्रीज के अंदर डिमांड गिर गई है। तो इन टर्म्स ऑफ नंबर इज गोइंग टू बी मच मोर, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल पहले वाले स्ट्रक्चरल के अंदर वी सेड इंडस्ट्री शटडाउन परमानेंट है, but those with multi skills can still move on to the other नौकरीज, राइट? लेकिन cyclical के अंदर तो people cannot even move into other industries because everybody is facing the problem uh, exactly the same way। Make sure that we have to compare. If only one type is analyzed, obviously you can't get more than 2 marks and you can't get your evaluation, because evaluation के लिए qualify करने के लिए you have to have a discussion on both। अब इसके अंदर if we were to have a discussion for our evaluation purposes कि जी evaluation के अंदर, because we have to answer which one is more, is structural more damaging, so we say it actually depends, na? It depends if structural can be more serious than cyclical, because it really depends on the time period in discussion। This is one of those significance wali discussion which I started this lecture with, that how much time do I have? Are we talking about like in the short run? Are we talking in terms of the long run? Um, we may need to even discuss like structural के अंदर retraining. Is it possible? Is it not possible? To what degree? Like खास तौर पे structural के केस में हमें ये पता है कि if textile industry goes down and it's not working anymore, तो आप लोगों को retrain करते हो और आप उनको redirect करते हो, maybe mobile phone assembly के अंदर। So how easily can you retrain the people? You know, even like the number of people affected, if number of people affected is great, uh, तो फिर ऑब्वियसली आप कह सकते हैं इट कैन बी मच मोर सीरियस, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान के अंदर अगर इफ वी हैव, इफ इन केस ऑफ पाकिस्तान इफ वी हैव टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री गो डाउन, पाकिस्तान के अंदर सेकेंडरी सेक्टर के अंदर द लार्जेस्ट एम्प्लॉयर इज टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री। सो इफ टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री गोज डाउन, द नंबर ऑफ पीपल आप रिट्रेन करके या आप किसी और इंडस्ट्री के अंदर आप उनको यूटिलाइज नहीं कर सकते। सो द नंबर्स विल बी ग्रेट एंड इट विल बी वेरी वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू मैनेज, राइट? बट अगर आपकी कोई छोटी मोटी इंडस्ट्रीज गेट्स अफेक्टेड, तो फिर मे बी इट माइट नॉट बी, लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर हम बात करें प्राइमरी के अंदर, वी नो पाकिस्तान in all three sectors, primary, secondary, tertiary के अंदर, the greatest number of employment in Pakistan is in primary sector. Primary sector does not require a lot of skill. अब अगर हम आहिस्ता आहिस्ता से प्राइमरी से सेकेंडरी और टर्शरी की तरफ मूव करते हैं तो दैट लेबर जो फार्म लैंड्स पे काम करता है दैट इंडिविजुअल डज नॉट हैव मच स्किल बेस टू मूव इनटू अदर जॉब. तो यहाँ पे आप ऑक्यूपेशनल इमोबिलिटी का डिस्कशन लेकर आ सकते हो. तो देयर सो मच बट द की थिंग इज that ऊपर you must have talked about cyclical की seriousness, structural की seriousness, and then now over here we're talking about in terms of those criteria under which cyclical can be more serious or structural can be more serious. ठीक? So that's how we'll go about this particular essay. I still have to discuss solution wale, which I've left the 12 markers. But if you notice, even if I show you the questions here, and we'll discuss it later, I think there's another question that we haven't gone through. This is a good one to go through. Also, explain three causes of unemployment. So the three ones, you simply define it. You get your marks. इसमें unemployment की definition का obviously mark नहीं होगा. ये 2024 का question है. Yeah, June 24, period 21. Simple है. Three causes, frictional, structural, cyclical. Basic definitions के साथ you get yourself 3 marks and consider which is likely to be most damaging to a high income economy. All right. So in this particular question, because they have added a layer, so अब high income economies are developed economies. अब developed economies के अंदर remember uh, you do tend to go over a lot of structural changes, but not as much as जो low income के अंदर होता है. आपके जो structures होते हैं वो क्या होता है? Your tertiary sector has overwhelming percentage, 70-80%. Secondary has like 10-15%, and then primary has like a single digit employment numbers, right? Overall economy की GDP and employment contributions अगर आप देखें. तो हाई इनकम के अंदर जो आपके पास असल इश्यूज आते हैं वो सिक्लिकल के आते हैं इकोनॉमीज में बूम एंड द बस्ट साइकिल्स राइट एंड दे आर प्रीटी सिग्निफिकेंट राइट एंड फ्रिक्शनल इज ऑलवेज देयर आल्सो बट रिलेटिवली टू नॉट दैट एक्सटेंट. क्यों? बिकॉज दे हैव फ्रिक्शनल क्या आती है? फ्रिक्शनल इज व्हेन एन इंडिविजुअल सीजनल अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट हो जाती है या फिर बंदा जो है एक पर्टिकुलर नौकरी से बेहतर नौकरी ढूंढ रहा होता है. तो वो जो सर्च टाइम और अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट होती है डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमीज हैव अ वे ऑफ फाइंडिंग गुड नौकरीज वेरी क्विकली बिकॉज दे हैव गुड जॉब सेंटर्स. They use LinkedIn and things like that. So it's very easy for them to find the next best naukri for themselves. So frictional is not so worrisome for them. They can easily move around. Seasonal में भी इतना बड़ा problem नहीं आता for them because um, uh, because of the education of the people, they can do all different types. So they have occupational mobility. तो इसलिए seasonal is not a problem for them also. So cyclical is the most damaging to them because it's widespread, and if it's not corrected, it can become long term. It affects the most number of people. तो high income को लेते हुए तुमने discuss करना है and the environment of it. Yep, so you can attempt those. जहां तक 12 markers है, it's always about policy. एक consequences के बारे में है. Assess whether consequences of technological unemployment are more likely to be serious than cyclical. For and against for technology, similar to that 8 marker. For and against for the cyclical unemployment. And then you make a comparison in terms of the same concept, the time duration, the number of people, the permanency, उसी aspect को आपने repeat करना है. So we're going to go over these questions later on in our third lecture for unemployment.